but people love to stick their neck into like like hornets' nests.
She-Hulk, attorney at law, and where were we? She-Hulk had just offered to go home with a man she met 30 seconds ago because he offered to split some fries with her, and she thinks he looks hot. And serious talk for a moment. You are worth more than this. Be you a man, a woman, or whatever you consider yourself to be, you're worth more than this. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You're worth going to bed with someone that at bare minimum actually cares about you. Not just someone who will pretend to care for half an hour to get you into bed and half a portion of fries. My thoughts on equality have changed a little over time, you see. Men and women are clearly very different, and I can't help but feel we do a disservice to both in trying to treat them as if they're the same. Equality may be like having a son and a daughter and getting them both a birthday present, but knowing that a Barbie doll is not what the son wants, even if that's what the daughter did want. Is that clear enough? Maybe not. But you see, getting them both a Barbie doll would be perfectly equal, but most sons wouldn't be happy with it. And that, I fear, is what society has done to women. Sex has become more egalitarian over the last 50 or 60 years, and it was supposed to make women more happy. But when polled, women's life satisfaction and happiness has gone through the floor. And this kind of hookup culture doesn't seem to be delivering what it takes for women to be happy in their own lives. This show seems to bear very little resemblance to the original run of the Savage She-Hulk from 1980. And I know this because I went back and read them for background research for these videos, which sadly may mean that I did more research than Jessica Gao did in writing it. And She-Hulk in those issues bears little resemblance to the character from this show. This, for example, is issue 5 from 1980. This is the cover with She-Hulk fighting a giant robot snake. And page 1, boom, she's holding up a suspension bridge so civilians can get away. Issue 6, she has a showdown with Iron Man. Issue 7's cover, swamp demons. Okay, so that turned out to be a bad issue, but it had a catchy cover. That's the hook, just swamp demons. Cut to the TV series, and instead of fighting Iron Man, She-Hulk goes on Tinder dates and twerks with Megan Thee Stallion. And instead of fighting purple swamp demons, She-Hulk now has arguments with Twitter trolls. It's hard not to notice the, if anything, entitled mindset of many Hollywood progressives, who feel entitled to butcher and change other people's art and characters and the cultural history of other countries, to remake it in their image, remake it in a way to suit them. And they didn't even stop there. It didn't even stop before it came to airbrushing the actual history of other countries. So Hollywood helps itself to Danish culture, to German culture, to English culture, to Norwegian culture, and acts like it's theirs now, and acts like it's all A-OK that they're doing it. It's a neo-colonialist mindset. And it's offensive. We end up with films like U-571, a film that portrayed the story of a World War II German submarine boarded by American submariners to capture an Enigma cipher machine, with the slight problem that the plot attracted substantial criticism. British sailors from HMS Bulldog had captured the first naval Enigma machine from U-110 in the North Atlantic in May 1941, 9 months before the USA even entered the war in December 1941. And it seems to be the endeavours of this British crew that were appropriated and given to Americans in this film. The inaccuracies reached right to the House of Commons in the UK, where the then Prime Minister, Tony Blair, agreed that this film was an affront to British sailors. This is literal stolen valour. And codebreakers at Bletchley Park had allegedly cracked the code of Enigma roughly a year before the film was even set, after a multinational effort to break the code. In reality, the real submarine U-571 was never captured. It was sunk by an Australian plane off Ireland in 1944, with the loss of all hands. For more examples of Hollywood doing this type of thing, also see Braveheart, Also see Argo. Also see the Netflix series The Vikings, where the writers race and gender swapped real historical Norwegian ruler Jarl Hakon, and it goes on and on and on, and it's bloody offensive. And with that kind of entitlement, we end up with this, taking a Stan Lee character that was originally a heroic and selfless campaigner for justice, and she ends up in this version of her, lacking heroism, selfish, greedy, short-sighted and an idiot. And worst of all for the writers of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, she seems to be a self-insert. And when as a writer you do a self-insert and she ends up as a drunken, selfish skank, it may be time to have a good long look in the mirror and re-evaluate your life. This is a character that had meaning to some people. This character had fans long before this series was a thing. She's had fans since 1979. A character that was originally quite feminist in 1980 and yet still was accepted by an overwhelmingly male audience is now twerking with Megan Thee Stallion. And this is how feminism has progressed since 1979. Progressed in inverted commas. And yet the creatives have the temerity to claim that the poor reception is due to sexism. 42 years later, and it appears you've not only not broken new ground, you've gone backwards and degenerated. I mean, really, what's in it for Jen in saving the world? Well, for starters, she lives in the world too. The high-paying job that she seems to care so much about is not going to be much use if there's no planet left, is it? No planet, and she won't have anywhere to buy box wine and act like a skank. Meanwhile, after the judge delayed the case, Donny Blaze is at it again at another magic show, where this time he accidentally opens a portal to hell, and demons fill the entire theatre. Donny panics and goes to Wong for help when he realises he can't solve it on his own. Meanwhile, Jen and her date have got back to her place and are sitting on the couch talking. She's telling him about her job and how she has to be She-Hulk when she's at the office. And he says, "Tell me more about how you felt." And again, if this is a self-insert, the person that wrote this is tragically egocentric, just wanting a man to fawn over them and give them attention while not reciprocating in any way at all. It's not a meeting of two equals or would-be partners, it's all about her, him agreeing with everything she says and asking her to say more things for him to agree with. If the writers are single, it's hard to imagine why. I would have thought they could find someone they adore as easily as looking in any mirror. And is this supposed to be the humour in the series? Having a character in She-Hulk that they're trying to write as feminist that in reality seems to envy men. The writers delight in belittling and emasculating the male characters and do it repeatedly in humiliating the men by having them act in a stereotypically feminine way. The whole endeavour of She-Hulk Attorney at Law as a show comes across to me as dripping in hate. The writers seem to hate men, envy men, and yet simultaneously want men, while viewing women as being less than men, and their fantasy ideal woman is one who acts like a man. Wong tries to get Jen to help with the demons, but she's too busy with her date, trying to get laid. After trying to phone multiple times, Wong opens a portal into Jen's flat to get her, and finally she relents. They need to fight the demons back and push them into a portal, and as she starts to fight, She-Hulk says, "You know these are technically billable hours." They just never allow her to be heroic for even a minute. She never thinks about anyone but herself. After the demons are beaten, Jen threatens Donny with one of them to get him to agree to her and Wong's demands, and then Wong sends her home back to her date. Back at her house, her date is lying on the couch reading a book on feminism. She lands straddling him and then carries him to bed in the way a man would carry a petite woman, and mercifully the camera cuts away. Jen's date gets up in the morning and Jen has made breakfast, and his actions are frankly bizarre. He seems unhappy that She-Hulk is not there, which in some ways is understandable. He went on a date with She-Hulk, not Jen. She's changed and looks completely different to the woman he was interested in. She also acts different, but she can change back into She-Hulk. The woman that he liked is still there. Or was he still going to leave, even if She-Hulk had met him in the morning? If he liked She-Hulk, surely he would ask to maybe see She-Hulk again. So I can only conclude he would have left, even if it was She-Hulk there. Either way, it seems kind of dumb to love and leave an emotionally erratic Hulk that could literally tear you in half. I'm just not sure for me that the sex would justify the risk. The notion of a normal human having sex with someone with super strength is frankly a bad idea. People tend to get involuntary muscle contractions during sex, and this being the case, what is the result going to be if this happens to She-Hulk while he's inside her? I'm not going to get too graphic, but in my head, I'm picturing a cigar cutter. Or maybe that scene from The Boys where a Superwoman got overexcited and accidentally crushed that guy's head. Jen then gets someone at the door, and the man at the door presents a summons from Titania, who's copyrighted the name She-Hulk and is now suing Jen. The post-credit scene is more of Wong and Madison being completely annoying.
Could you make me a cup of tea, please, Stephanie?